What is up, guys? Today we are back with a brand new video that I wanted to do. So this is going to be the start of sort of a seasonal series, I guess you could say. So this is when we're getting into spoiler season, is what I like to call it, what a lot of other people like to call it, where we get to see cards before the expansion comes out and get a kind of look over them, see how we might, introduce some interactions with cards we already have, and then just go on from there. So without further ado, let's get right into what we have so far. So we have 19 cards as of this video, and I'm very, very excited for some of the interactions that we're going to see. Namely, for Warlock, I'm thinking Handlock is going to stay very, very powerful in the near future. Also, some possibilities as far as Mage goes, and maybe just elongating the power that we see from Face Hunter, or even Mid-Range Hunter going as far as that. Um, but I guess let's get right into it. So first off, we're going to go with the neutral cards that we have so far. So starting off, we see Justicar True Heart. So it's battle cry. It's kind of underwhelming, seeing as it's a 6/3. It's very, very underwhelming for a 6-drop. However, it does do something significant that can change the tides of the rest of the match that you're in. So it replaces your starting hero power with a better one, as you can see. And as you can see also from the picture that's going to pop up right now, there are quite a few significant bonuses you can get from this. So first off, I'm really, really liking the Priest one. Healing 4 health is very, very significant. Turn by turn, that can get value very, very quickly. Extremely fast. Silverhand, so you're going to be getting 2 Silverhand recruits. That's very powerful again, in my opinion, because you can play a Knife Juggler. If you have a protected Knife Juggler, or you have something that's going to have to be picked off by the luck of the draw of a Knife Juggler shot, then having 2 shots instead of 1 is absolutely invaluable. Mage is alright. The thing that I think is going to be very powerful is Justicar stacking with some of the other mage specific cards that are coming out that we've seen so far, but we'll get more into that later. I don't think Hunter is very good, honestly. I don't think that's going to be too relevant. Justicar is probably not going to be very good in that. Warlock's pretty great, and I think that Totemic Slam for the Shaman is also pretty great. I think that having the ability to draw without taking damage is pretty fantastic personally, but there is something to be said for the power of the handlock and how it kind of relies on the damage you're going to be taking in a stable sense from the hero power, and that gets rid of it. So I think that that's probably going to be sort of pushed on the back burner unless we see some really, really powerful Inspire cards from Warlock, which is another thing I'm going to get into later. So the Shaman one, I like it. I definitely like it. You can pick yourself a taunt every single turn, which is nice. You have the power to choose whatever type of tempo you want. So by running this, you're kind of relying on it, honestly, unless there's a card that gives you the ability to pull certain cards from your deck, which I doubt will happen at this point in the game. I don't think we're going to see it used very much in totem decks because, as much as I do love totem decks, I have to say that it probably isn't going to be that beneficial unless you can rely on it. If you can rely on it, we'll see some certain strategies come out of it, I'm sure. But otherwise, you're relying on a legendary to combo, and while with some things that can stall, such as when you're stalling for Thorson so you can get a combo with Grim Patron or something like that, it still doesn't seem to fit the archetypes that Shaman have so far. Again, we haven't seen all the cards, so I can't say that for sure. It doesn't seem to fit it too well, so I'm going to say that's probably not going to be used. Rogue, I think, is a little underwhelming, to be honest. Adding 1 damage is alright, I guess. Hero power 4... the warrior is pretty great, and I think that the dire shapeshift for druid is pretty good too. I think that gives a lot of utility as far as usual removals. Being a 3/2 removal means that when you're playing druid, then you can remove 3/2s that much easier. Again, this is turn 5, turn 6, so you're probably not going to be using this. But it is worth noting that there is a lot of utility that can come out of it, and we might see some really unique strategies that rely on it completely. But I'm excited. I'm just not entirely sold yet. If it was like a 6-4 or 6-5, I would be a lot more sold on the idea because it couldn't be picked off by a 2-drop. But seeing as a Frostbolt can pick it off right away, and you're relying on the value to come out of the boosted hero power, I think that that's probably going to be a little too. You can't really rely on it. It's not going to be reliable enough, I guess, to use. So on to the next one. We have Garrison Commander. So Garrison Commander is pretty cool. Being a neutral drop, it means that you're not gonna have to deal with all the mage stuff. As in, you don't have to necessarily play mage to get all of the additional hero power usage. And also, I didn't think of this until now, but a card that's coming up pretty soon would really go well with this. We'll talk about that later. But this has some utility. Being a 2-3, it's fine on its own because it has a little bit of survivability, but being able to use your hero power twice means that if you have a way to protect it, then you can definitely get a lot of value out of it. Moving on, we have Lowly Squire. I'm not too sold on this one either. Being a 1-2, I just don't know about it. I honestly don't. You're kind of, again, relying on it surviving to become a 2-2 or a 3-2, and seeing as you're gonna have, Leper Gnome drops and such, I think Leper Gnome's gonna be pretty popular, just as a removal for this in particular. But it's good. I'm not saying it isn't good because it's definitely pretty darn good, but I don't see it coming into value or overvalue very often. Moving on, we have Kodo Rider. Kodo Rider, I'm excited about. Kodo Rider, I'm very excited about. This card right here is a 3/5 6-drop, and it has the possibility to summon many, many more 3/5s, and that's a fantastic thing, guys. That is a really fantastic thing. Being a 6-drop, I feel like they had a certain card in mind that this was going to put a direct stop to, and its name was definitely Grim Patron. So, seeing it be 3/5, you almost know for a fact that they were thinking of this as a patron counter, because the second you use your hero power, you're going to be getting value out of this. Being a 3/5 6-drop isn't great because, you have Senjin, that's a 4-drop 3/5 with taunt, okay? So you definitely aren't going to be getting crazy value out of it if it gets removed right away. But if you're on turn 8, turn 9, and you have, the additional mana to hero power, then it's worth playing. If you have no effective removals remaining from your opponent, it's worth playing. I mean, there's a lot of ways that this is a very good card, and I'm very excited for it in the future. I think that we're going to see this as a hard counter for patron decks, to be honest. I really do. Silverhand Regent, so that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool card. We're going to see some synergies come out of this, I'm sure, as well. Seeing as it is a 3-drop 3/3, again, it's not fantastic, but it's pretty good. It's definitely pretty good. Again, I think relying on the hero power, unless it's a very substantial effect that comes out of being able to use it once or twice, you're not going to get the survivability that you really need. And seeing as this can be taken out with a low-level removal from Mage, specifically, I just don't see it. Again, it can be removed by Patron, mid-range, mid-range Warrior, Control Warrior, Patron. You have pretty much every mage that's going to be running Frostbolt will be able to take it out very easily. There are plenty of early removals that'll get rid of this right off the bat, and that kind of concerns me. But it's still relatively valuable, especially if you can get Quartermasters in. So that's my thoughts on that. If it was a 3/4, I'd feel a lot more solid about it. So Skycap and Craig, I've never been a fan of pirates, but it does have some potential. I'll give it that. It has potential. I'm kind of excited to see the synergies that pirates have. If there are any more significant cards, seeing as it's a pirate legendary, I would assume there are 2 to 3 more neutrals that go along with it, at least. But it would be nice to see, but I'm not exactly counting on it. And if it's just a one-off, then that would kind of suck again. They did mention that Pirates versus Ninjas probably will never happen, but it might happen. So I don't think that they would go all out designing tons of pirate cards in this set necessarily. Uh, it concerns me that it has a pretty high health, and we might see it played because there was a legendary pirate deck not too long ago that was really good, and it was kind of floating around. There weren't a lot of people playing it, but there was a professional streamer that actually got to legend with a pirate deck and did very, very well with it at a very high win rate. So seeing another burst of utility that you can have with a pirate deck is really great. I'm hoping we're going to see something similar to in just additional utility, not necessarily similar in style for Murlocs, just to boost their usability a little bit more. But we'll see. We'll see. Moving on, Frost Giant. So, Frost Giant, I'm very excited about. I wasn't excited about it. Moving back to earlier, the 2-drop 2/3 that I was talking about can take down its cost quite a bit right off the bat, and especially if you're playing something like, I don't know, Handlock, and you have, I don't know, well, Justicar maybe, then this becomes a very, very valuable asset. And I don't think that it's going to be widely used at first, because being a 10 drop and then relying on that early usage of your hero power, relying on hero power usage is never a good thing, okay? Unless you can completely count on being able to play within your opponent's curve while maintaining the usage of a hero power, because usually that's something you use to maintain tempo. You don't initiate your tempo on a hero power. That's not something we're used to seeing. So, and the only exception I can think of, again, and I've mentioned it a few times, is Handlock, where it kind of relies on the early damage, the stable damage taken from its hero power to be able to power into the Moltons that you can drop for very, very low mana cost. So Frost Giant's going to be interesting. We'll see how it goes, but being a 10 drop and relying on early usage of your hero power, it's kind of a little off. But again, I think it's going to see some use as far as Handlock goes. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm excited about it. Having another giant, very cool. Maiden of the Lake. Interesting. Very interesting. I think we're going to see a lot of synergy as far as Mage goes with it. I don't think we're going to see a lot else unless, no, I don't think we're going to see it a lot else, honestly. I think we could probably see, honestly, just Mage. That's the only thing I really see it in, is Mage at this point. But it might be used elsewhere. I just don't see it right now with my understanding of everything. I think it's going to be used widely in Mage. I think Mage is going to be really, really good this expansion so far. Very interested to see what Inspire Mechanics Warlock creatures have. But anyways, now we are moving into the class-specific cards. So first off, we have Shaman with Tuskar Totemic. So, battle cries, summon any random totem. Fantastic stuff. If we see some more totems come in later, I'm going to be excited for this card. I'm going to be excited for a Shaman card. When's the last time you said that? But it has a lot of possibility. As far as dropping 1 or 2 value totem, I mean, being a 3/2 3-drop, it's not too great looking. There's so many removals at this point that I just don't see it being used very much. But totem shamans are always, looking for new utility to use, and I don't know a whole lot of them, but I definitely could see it being used. So value-wise, I'm not sure how it's going to go, but it does have the possibility, and I'm sure all the totem shamans out there, you know who you are. Much respect to you if you can figure out how to use some of these new cards, because I really, really don't see them being used very well. At least as synergizing with each other as far as that goes. And I'll tell you guys why. So this is a 3-drop. Keep that in mind. So moving on, we have a 5-drop. Give your totems +2 attack. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Definitely like the Savage Roar-esque play we have here. 3/6 for 5 isn't bad. It really isn't. And using it as an Inspire means that, you know, I think we will see Shaman be used. I think this is a fantastic card. I think we're probably going to see it slowly get picked up, and then someone's going to figure out something that drags all of this together to synergize, and it's going to work very well. Because the thing that Shamans miss is either they get chunked due to mid-late game removal, or they get chunked due to early game removal and not being able to keep up tempo with card draw. So by having all of these new battle cries that add totems to the field, by making their hero power cost 1, by making everything cost less, by adding more totems, by adding more utility, you give them more tools to play with. That gives them more things on the field, more board control generally. And so they don't necessarily need to play all the cards in their hand and rely on other card draws from neutral things like Acolyte to be able to function as a class. So that's what we see a lot, and that's why Shaman isn't great right now, is because of the eventual loss in tempo, because it doesn't have enough cards in his hand and doesn't have enough board presence to be able to keep things rolling. So that's why it's kind of hard countered by Warlock. But that moving on, you guys all know that. I really do like Thunderbluff Valiant. I really do. I think it's going to be great. Moving on to Totem Golem. 3/4 for 2, but overload 1. So you're gimping your turn 3 play for the 3 costs we first went over. And see, I can see what they were trying to do, but it still doesn't even trade over Minibot, which concerns me. If it was a 3/5 2-drop overload 2, I would really be happy about this card, because it can trade with Minibot, and it can trade with multiple low-level removals, and it does gimp your next turn, so you're only going to have 1. If you're playing this on turn 2, you're only going to have 1 mana in the next turn, but I could see that being a relevant thing to do. I could see that being something that someone might do. Being a 3/5, or even a 3/4 taunt overload 1. Like that would just be so much more appealing, but it's not, and it doesn't trade with Minibot, and that is not good. I don't like it. Okay, so finally for the Shaman ones wrap up, we have Draenei Totem Carver. So battle cries gain +1/+1 for each friendly totem, with all of the new ways that you're going to be able to add totems, not to mention making them cheaper to add. I definitely think this has a place. I really do. I really, really like it. Being a 4-drop, 4/4, it passes the vanilla test right away. But having the possibility to go up to 7/7, 8/8 possibly on a very, very easy basis, I can see this being used. And I think that this is one particular card that's going to push up the tempo that Shaman has right now. So moving on, why do I have 2 of those open? Alright. We have Poison Blade, which is the only rogue card we've seen so far. Your hero power gives this weapon +1 attack instead of replacing it. Being a 4-drop, I don't see it, guys. I just don't see it. Eventually, I was thinking Oil Rogue, but not even that. You need to hero power. Okay, it'll get ran right off the bat. Mark my words. Right off the bat, it'll get ran. And then Ooze will just sort of seep into every deck. Everyone's going to run an Ooze. That's it. It's over. Out of the meta, gone. That's going to be the counter to it, is everyone's going to run Ooze, and then suddenly that's not going to be valuable anymore. Because eventually, that would be very, very powerful if Ooze wasn't here. If there was no low-level way to remove this. But there is, and it's going to make this absolutely useless. No doubt in my mind. Moving on to Fallen Hero. Hero power deals 1 extra damage. Again, this card is pretty cool. Kind of concerns me. Being a 3/2, 2-drop, you'd expect it to have a pretty significant pretty significant ability. And I think it has that. I think it really does, and I'm pretty excited for it. The synergy that it has with the next card, Koldara Drake, is you can use your hero power any number of times. Then going back to the 4-drop 2/6 that we saw earlier, which I forget the name of because I'm terrible at memorizing names of cards. I think that this is probably going to be a pretty great synergy, guys. I think that there's going to be early game setup, and then you're going to have your mid game setup that's like protected by your early game setup, and then your late game is going to just be pinging every single thing off. And I think that that's going to be a fun way to play. I think that it's going to breed a lot of strategy. And I think Paladin is going to be made a lot better because Paladin's going to be able to quality consecrate 6 cost and instantly clear the board. Board clears like Hellfire. I don't think that's going to be too relevant because these are higher cost and higher health minions that we're seeing here. So I don't really see that being as relevant as before. But this is cool. This is cool, and I think we're going to see a pretty significant deck come out of it that's probably going to make a pretty big change in the meta, to be completely honest. Moving on, we have Effigy. So when a friendly minion dies, summon a random minion with the same cost. Add that RNG. So by running the chances of getting a card that promotes value and a card that doesn't promote value with certain picks, this card is not going to be used in like anything like, Freeze Mage, nothing like that. Guarantee it. Not going to happen. And the reason why is that you're going to end up with the Mad Scientist, Mad Scientist. You're going to end up with those, and they're going to bring this out on the field. It's going to end up gimping you because you're going to end up having a low cost that gets brought back with some other low cost. But I could see it being played with a specific strategy in mind without Mad Scientist. Without that, completely get it out of your deck, and Effigy is relevant. But we'll see how it goes. Percentage-wise, I'm not sure how it's going to work, but there might be certain drops that are going to be very relevant with this. I'm thinking what we're going to see, well, Freeze Mage maybe. No, you couldn't. You couldn't rely on it. You almost have to rely on the Molten, but by relying on the Molten, you're going to be having Mad Scientist in your deck, and that totally gets the strategy, because if you get Effigy out, then you're just screwing yourself. And there are way better cards that you can add to a Freeze Mage. So moving on to the Hunter ones we have so far, which are 2. We have Lock and Load. Each time you cast a spell this turn, add a random Hunter card to your hand. As we saw in the demo matches that we saw, I think that this is probably going to have some niche use, but being a 2-drop and like relying on just one turn to get value, you're going to be kind of you're going to be relying on not getting like tracking, for example. If you get a tracking, you're just kind of screwing yourself. This is not a good drop if you just have, one card to use. If you have 2, your odds go up of getting something that's going to create value, like a quick shot, for example, or well, really anything other than tracking, actually. There are very few things that are Hunter cards that I think, as far as spells go, that wouldn't create value for this card. But I still think that there are better alternatives for pretty much everything, except it might get some use, again, in mid-range, which is where I think a lot of this is going to fall, because they're trying to steer towards strategy and not mindlessness, I think even some of the announcers, well, I know some for a fact some of the announcers kind of like slyly make fun of Face Hunter players when they have the chance. Like I know Frodan yesterday when he was commentating the matches was like, you can tell this is an obviously skilled player. If you didn't know a whole lot about it, you'd be like, yeah, he's skilled, he won, right? But if you knew a lot about Hearthstone, you're like, yeah, that's a little jab in there, There's not a whole lot of skill or foresight that goes into that, and I think that they're trying to steer towards the skill. Summon 3 1/1 web spinners. That's interesting. I don't know how that's going to go, to be honest. We might see some shifts in the meta as far as using these newer cards in Hunter decks, and I'm curious to see how it's going to go. To be completely honest, I don't know off the top of my head what the interactions are going to be, but I think this is good with Knife Juggler. I think this is good with mid-range because you're going to be getting more beasts in your hand. Um, Houndmaster can come back in. That'd be good because you're getting a guaranteed +2/+2 taunt onto whatever you're going to be playing from these web spinners. So it's got some possibilities. We'll see. But I think that that's probably gonna, I don't know, it's a little high cost. If it was 5, again, with little tiny tweaks, these would be very, very powerful cards again, in my opinion. But I kind of like these so far. I'm looking forward to this. I like how they added the new mechanic. Inspire seems like it's gonna be fun. I think it's terrifying for Mage so far, and it's terrifying for Warlock because it'll just make Handlock more powerful if there are any decent Inspire cards for it. And I think that that's going to push that, like, just shove it straight into the meta. Like, when it's been kind of teetering on the edge back and forth because there are some hard counters for it, I think that that's going to push it straight into the spotlight if there are some really, really good Warlock Inspire cards. And that about wraps it up, guys. That's all the cards we got so far. We have 19 cards, and we're just going to keep going over them every single day. Every time that we get a new card, we are going to go over it. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, drop them in the comments below, and I read them, and I'll respond to them. And if you bring up any good points, I'll mention them in the next video. We'll see how it goes. And yeah, I'm excited so far. This is good, guys. This is good. We're getting more mechanics. We're getting more ways to add strategy to our play. We're making it so you have to think more about what your opponent can play. Just adding more cards in general is exciting, but making it so it's a new entire mechanic that requires new strategy, that requires new thinking, it's very exciting, especially for someone that enjoys this game as much as I do. So until next time, guys, I'll see you in it. We'll redo that. I'll see you next time, guys. Until then, peace.